Welcome to Revitalize and Replant with Mark Clifton, where we equip pastors to take their churches from declining to thriving by pointing them to a new future and a new hope. Join us weekly for encouragement and practical advice in your pastoring journey.
Hey, thank you, Dan. This is Mark. I'm here with Mark Hallock.
Hey.
I should say I'm Mark Clifton. This is Mark Hallock. We're not the 9 Marks. We're the 2 Marks.
We're the two Marks. That's
we
good.
We just thought that up.
He's here all week, folks.
I know. I am. We are at Linwood Baptist Church. I know some of you are getting tired of hearing us say that, but we never get tired of talking about it. We're going to be here for a few more podcasts in beautiful downtown Linwood, Kansas. And, of course, Linwood was the church that we replanted in 2020. It's doing really well. A little town of 400 people out in Kansas. If you're anywhere near Linwood right now, drive on by. And we got plenty of seating here, and you can join us.
We'd love to have you.
We would.
We'd love to have a live audience.
We would love to have some visitors. Oh, that's what we're going to talk about today.
That's right.
Dum-dum. You know, Barna says that really within the first couple of minutes, most first-time visitors, they make up their mind almost entirely on those first impressions, and you can overcome those eventually, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Those first impressions, when you walk in the door, or even when you drive in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
And walk in the door and sit down and all those things, those first impressions are really, really strong.
Yeah.
And, maybe we don't get as many visitors as we used to in those days. That we've talked about that before. The culture has changed perhaps, and especially smaller churches, and that's basically the only people that listen to us. So basically, smaller churches, we probably don't attract as many visitors as the large churches. They seem to have a larger center of gravity. But that means if you're a smaller church, you need to be more focused on it. And part of the problem is if you go week after week after week and you don't have any visitors, you don't really prepare for them. And so when they do show up, they feel a little awkward or uncomfortable or like, what am I supposed to be doing here? So here we go, guys. We're going to talk today about several things you need to do to be prepared for the occasional visitor who shows up at your church.
That's right. How to make them feel welcome.
Yeah. Now, number one, Mark, it's pretty simple, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Go ahead.
Okay. Have a great church website.
Yes, as opposed to a bad church website.
And it doesn't. And here's when we say that it doesn't need to be over the top, incredible. It needs to not look cheesy and outdated.
Yes, not cheesy and not outdated, and it just needs to tell who you are, what time your service is, maybe what entrance you want to come into, just a very little bit about yourself. But look at your website as though you don't know anything about your church.
Yeah, right.
I'm often asked to speak at different churches, and so I'll go to the website, and I want to find out what time the worship service starts. Generally, I've got to make 2 or 3 clicks to get there.
Oh, yeah.
It's not on the front page.
Seriously. Usually the big church is the hardest to figure out.
It is not on the front page. You got to go to About, or you got to go to our ministries, and then you got to go to, and then, it's 10:45. Why it's not on the banner is way beyond me.
I know.
Keep
it simple.
Keep it simple. We meet at 10:35 and all that. Okay, so good website. Number 2.
Okay, number 2 is, this is good, easy parking.
Yes. Now you go, now wait a minute. We got plenty of parking. Now when I was at Warnell Road Baptist Church in Kansas City, Missouri, the first week I was there we had 18, and within a year we swelled to about 20. And so we had plenty of parking, all right? That was not a problem. In fact, there was some merchants near us, and I would encourage the employees of the merchants to park in our parking lot on Sunday.
To make it look like more people
we had
were there.
people there. But I did do one thing. I went out and I had some really cool signs made that said, reserved for first-time guests.
Oh, I like it.
Okay? Why did I do that? Believe me, there was plenty of parking spots. Because it says we expect first-time guests.
Yeah, yes, that's
We're
right.
not surprised by first-time guests.
Good point.
So if you're a first-time guest and you drive in and there's a space for you, you think it does communicate, they expect first-time guests here. They want first-time guests here.
Yep.
And they value first-time guests. So even if you don't have a parking problem, now if you've got a parking problem, then absolutely do this.
Yeah.
But a lot of the churches we're talking to, you don't have a parking problem. But did you ever think of putting up a couple of signs that say first-time guest?
I love that.
Or, of course, you want one that says pastor and pastor's wife. I'm sorry.
They still do that?
I was at a church the other day. This is about a year or two ago. And the first spot by the door was pastor's wife. The second spot was pastor. And the first thing I thought was, well, they're not riding together. Anyway, that's another story for another day. But it's true. I thought
avoid that at all costs.
But please put up some signs that say first-time guest parking. I think that would be good.
Here's number 3. Yeah. This is huge, and this is one that I talk about all the time with guys, is friendly greeters.
As opposed to
unfriendly greeters. That's right. Well, and let me tell you this, Pastor, I really believe this. You have to be, now I know this makes introverts nervous, Clifton.
Yes.
But on some level, you need to be the lead greeter.
Yes, you do.
Especially in smaller churches.
Oh, totally.
You know, I've said this before. One of my goals has been over the years to try to give everybody a high five or a hug or something, some kind of physical touch before I get in the pulpit.
I don't know if I should even say this or not. I really don't, because it's a confession of a weakness that I have.
That's all right.
I am introverted almost to the part of dysfunction sometimes. And I think people don't understand that about me, because you say, man, you get up there and you're preaching to 500 people.
Yeah,
I can preach to 500 people, and I can do this podcast, but ask me to get into a one-to-one conversation for a while, and I freeze up.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And so I found when I was at Warnell particularly, I found I really enjoyed being at the door as people came in.
Gotcha.
Because, number one, I got to see everybody.
Yep.
Number two, I got to greet them.
Yep.
And number three, they walked right on past me.
It was quick. It was quick.
I hate to admit that, because that's not a good thing. You know,
but at least you were still intentional.
I was, because I do tell people you need to walk slow among your people, carry on conversations with them.
Yep.
But there were times that many times I would say, I'm just going to go to the front door, and actually it was our back door, because our parking lot was behind us, and so everybody came in that door, and so I got to greet everybody.
Yes.
And I didn't have, but it was important. So yes, greeters, and I know a long time ago, Rick Warren said, whoever is the first person that people see at your door should in some way represent the type of people you're trying to reach.
Oh, wow.
Now, that doesn't mean that if you have an 86-year-old man who wears a suit, he's not supposed to be a greeter. But it does mean this. If you've got an 86-year-old man who's always wearing a suit and he's the first thing somebody sees, oftentimes their first impression is this is an older church and people dress really nice. Nothing wrong with being in older churches. There's nothing wrong with people dressing really nice.
Right.
But if he doesn't represent the majority of the people inside that building, that he may not be the one that should be at the front door.
No, that's right. Or if he is, here's what I would say. Team him up with a couple, if you've got a couple kids.
Yeah, that's
I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like make kids or teenagers part of the greeting team.
Yes, absolutely.
And let them do it together.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so friendly greeters. Okay, here's one. Interior signs.
Yes. Oh, please.
So we talk about the info booth, restrooms. Like, where are the bathrooms, man?
No, I know. As soon as you walk in, there should be clear signs. Even if it's a small church. We think, it's just a small church. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. They don't know where to go.
They don't know where to go. You need to have a sign that says worship center with an arrow this way, children with an arrow that way, and restrooms that way. If when your people walk in, if someone walks in, if they can't immediately know, because everything about that lowers their anxiety. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
It also lets them know they expect me to be here.
Yep.
I know enough about church architecture. I can walk into most church buildings and figure out where the restroom is, okay? Not always, I agree, but usually I kind of know, down this hallway, if there's a water fountain nearby, there's going to be a restroom on either side, that kind of thing. But man, very seldom do I walk into any door of a church and there's a clear sign that says worship center this way, restrooms are this way. I mean, oftentimes there'll be a sign that says office. Yeah. And I guess that's important during the week, but I'm a visitor. I don't need to go to the office unless I get in trouble.
Right.
But I want to know where the worship center is.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's good. Clear, easy signage. Number 5, the next one is just an inviting atmosphere. And here's what we mean by that. I mean, there's a lot of things we mean by that. But like clean spaces, cleanliness. That's one of the things, by the way, here at Linwood.
Yeah.
As soon as I walked in, I'm like, it's like immaculate, man. I mean, there's some folks that are very intentional about making this place. It smells good. It doesn't smell
Yes.
weird.
Did you notice
There's nothing
that?
worse than oh, dude, the bathrooms smell great.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than going to a stinky,
musty smelling
oh my
church.
gosh, it's not
And
welcoming.
it's amazing how that we get used to that church musty smell. And that musty smell is often, sometimes it's old draperies, old carpet, it's old pew coverings, you know,
Yeah.
the paddings in the pew. It's old silk flowers that have dirt or dust all over them. That kind of stuff. And the church is closed up for, 5 days a week.
Yep.
And it can smell musty. And we walk in there and it's like, well, it's our church. It
Yeah,
kind of smells
yeah.
like Grandma and Grandpa's house.
So there's a strange comfort to
It
it.
smells like old people in here. I remember used to get in my dad's car. I love my dad, but I'd
Yeah.
get in my dad's car. I think, this thing smells like an old person. Now so my car is filled with all kinds of those little trees that hang around. Jill walks in
So
there.
you won't become an old guy's
he
car.
says, this thing why do you got all this stuff in here? Because I don't want it to smell like an old person. I don't know what that is, but I know it when I smell it. Make sure your church, this looks clean. It doesn't have to look new, but it has to look clean.
Clean.
But also not cluttered.
Yes.
Not cluttered. Can I
You
say
got to
that?
throw some stuff away, man.
Not cluttered.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to be clean and lean and not cluttered. So if there is something on the wall, people draw attention. It means something.
means
There's
something.
a poster of something that's coming
Yeah,
up, a
that's
promotion
good.
about missions, but not just cluttered stuff all over the place. Easy for me to say.
No, yeah.
Because I'm not at your church, and everything in your church somebody gave and
No, I
wants to
know.
have it
That's
there.
right. That's right.
But still, try not to be cluttered.
That's good.
All right?
Okay, here's the next one is exceptional childcare.
That's right. Doesn't mean it have to be. It doesn't mean it have to be all the best equipment,
Right.
and the newest equipment. But it has
That's right.
to be. And here's a really important thing, guys. Look, I realize sometimes you don't have any children in your church, and the nursery hasn't been used for a long, long time.
Yep.
Please, right now, just as soon as this podcast is over, go to your church, go to your preschool area, go to your nursery area, look at it, and then I'm begging you, call your area missionary, literally, and say, hey, I'm Mark, I'm pastor here at Linwood. Can you connect me with one of our larger churches that has a staff person that deals with preschool?
Yes.
And talk to that person in one of the larger churches that deal with preschool and say, well, would you mind coming by here sometime and giving an inventory of our preschool room and tell me what things we need to remove and what things we need to replace? I want to know what a professional
That's a great idea.
person who does preschool ministry to church, I want to know what they think we need to have.
Yep.
I'm going to be very frank about this. A lot of times people will bring old toys and old things to have in the preschool room. And, even, I'll be careful, but even recently, there were some, Transformers and Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you, those things don't belong in a church nursery. Not because I got a problem with Transformers or Ninja Turtles, but in a church preschool area, it should look more institutional, not like somebody's bedroom, right? These are old toys that were brought in. Secondly, you're going to try to teach the children through play. We ought to do a whole podcast on this.
Yep.
And so you have a little area there of like dishes and a stove, and kids, boys and girls both, they love to play like they're making a meal.
Yeah.
And while they're making the meal, then the teacher just talks about, we thank God for the food. Let's bless the food. God makes the food. You have another area that's just generic blocks, right? They're not like cartoon characters.
Yeah.
They're just generic blocks. Yep. And as the boy builds something, you talk about how God builds things in our life. And in other words, you want things that are relatively generic so you can bring conversations not about the Ninja Turtles,
Right.
but about God. And so
That's really good.
Someone will help you do that.
Yeah.
So make sure someone from another church can come in that knows what they're doing and tell you what you need.
Yep.
Then, are you ready? Then you need to have somebody in your congregation, two people, not just one, maybe a husband and wife, that if a visitor shows up with a young person, with a preschooler, you can immediately, even though maybe you haven't had any kids in that nursery for 6 months, and here comes a visitor and they got a couple of little kids, immediately that couple, young or old, doesn't matter, they go to that person, they say, it is we're responsible for the nursery today. Not, oh, if someone comes, we're supposed to do the nursery.
Yeah.
That's not what you say. Just say, hey, we're responsible for the nursery today.
Yeah.
Are you ready? You're welcome to bring the children into the worship center. We love to have that. But if you would like to take them to the nursery, my husband and I would be glad to do that.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're going to take them into the worship center. But you need to have somebody there to say, we're here to do the nursery today.
That's so good.
Okay,
man. That is so good.
That is good.
So
isn't
practical.
It? That's worth the price
that
of
is.
this
podcast.
All right,
I would agree.
Move ahead.
Okay, here's the next one: is visitor-friendly sanctuary. A visitor-friendly sanctuary, creating a sanctuary that invites visitors in. Now, listen. In this article, it talks about 3 things. 1, don't have large sections roped off. That's interesting. This might confuse visitors and make your church seem uninviting.
Oh, you think?
Secondly, do have ushers available to guide folks. Now, again, you might be like, well, we don't need ushers. You know what I mean? But again, this part to me is part of that hospitality.
It is hospitality.
You know, of helping them feel comfortable. And then this is good. The last one is don't place new visitors right at the front.
No, absolutely.
There's no quicker way to make them feel like they're under a microscope, right? Than being in the front.
And by the way, this came from Outreach Magazine, so we'll put it on the show notes. But I know sometimes we rope it off because we want to, but roping it off, I know a lot of you all do that. I would suggest if you have movable chairs, just take chairs out of the room.
Yeah.
If you have pews, try to get movable chairs instead. But if you've got pews, you're pretty much just going to have to live with it. And you just want to encourage your people to set up closer to the front.
That's it. Because
'Cause
visitors don't want to be
if
trapped.
your people are sitting in the front section, the visitor is not going to sit 10 rows back by himself.
Yeah.
He's going to come up. He may not be right at the front, but he'll be up closer to the front. So rather than roping off, now, if your people won't do it, I mean, they won't do it. I get that. Here's the real issue with visitors and where they sit. Are you ready? Get your pen and pencil ready.
Here we go.
This is a game changer, ladies and gentlemen. Game changer. It's important to have ushers, I suppose, to say, would you like to sit here? Although it's not a wedding. I mean, that seems a little weird, too, sometimes. If you got, like at Warnell, we could seat 610 people. We had 30 in there. They didn't need help finding a seat. But here's the deal. Rather than necessarily having ushers seat people, have some people who are standing at the back, greeting people, and if a new family comes in, watch where they sit. Are you ready? This is really important. And then have that one of those couples that's assigned to do this go and sit next to them so that your new people are never sitting alone.
Dude, that's way good.
I mean, that makes them feel part of the congregation. Now,
sure.
you don't bug them and bother them.
Yeah.
You introduce yourself. I'm Mark. This is my wife, Jill. Glad you're here today. And that's all you got to say right now. But they're not in a row alone.
Yes.
Because the worst thing that can happen is if everybody in the church is up here and they're 2 or 3 rows back all by themselves, that's dead.
That is.
So make sure that you've got some people who are aware to see if someone's here and I've never seen, and even if they've been there before but you don't recognize them, then go sit by them anyway.
Yeah, yep.
And we get in the habits of sitting in the same places with the same people.
That's right.
And our people need to look at the sanctuary and say, well, there's somebody I don't recognize, somebody that might be new.
Totally.
They're sitting by themselves. I'm going to go sit by them.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. Hey, here's the next one. And let me just say a few things to this. And I'd love to get your thoughts. So it's acknowledge visitors during the service. Now, when we say that, a couple things. One, we want to welcome them. We don't want to single them out, right?
No.
There's churches where literally it's like, hey, if you're a visitor, would you stand up and just introduce?
And by the way, don't turn this off because I'm going to give you something in a minute that's going to blow you away.
Oh, wow. You're just full of it today. You got all kinds of stuff.
This is a big one today.
This is a biggie.
And don't be speeding this thing up to get to it. Got to listen to the whole thing, all right?
Okay,
but here's one
go.
thing. In some ethnic cultures, it's considered inappropriate if you don't recognize them by name. Okay?
Okay.
In other words, we have someone guest with us today. Who are you? And they often will stand up and say, I am Mark Clifton. I am from the Linwood Baptist Church where Howie Lucas is pastor. That's considered to be respectful.
Yeah, respectful.
You're not
sure.
just ignoring them.
Yeah.
But that's your culture. And if that's the culture, then do that. But if that's not your culture, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't say, who are you and why are you here
Yeah.
today? Now, look, 45 years ago, when I was pastoring a rural church in North Missouri, that happened.
Yeah.
I mean, people would come and we'd have our song leader say, we got some visitors today. You want to tell us who you are? It's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
It came from a culture 100 years ago where that was, no one would walk into your
Yeah.
house
Yeah.
and you wouldn't ask who you are.
Yeah.
It was thought to be welcoming.
Right.
That's no longer the case.
Yep.
And then when I was a kid, we didn't do that, but we asked him to stand up. If you're here for the first time, would you stand up? And a visitor would hand them a visitor's card with a little red ribbon that said visitor.
Yeah.
And they would stick it on their clothes.
Oh, man.
So that everybody would know that, oh, you're a visitor. Again, it was a way to try to welcome. So here's what you do today.
Yeah.
You simply say, I know we must.
Yeah.
You can say, if we have first-time guests, or we do have first-time guests, I always say you're not a visitor.
Yep.
Because visitors are unexpected. You're a guest because
Yep.
we would love to have you here.
That's
and
good.
thank you for being here. And we want you to get to know us at your own pace. And here's the deal I'm going to share with you. This is a great idea.
Okay.
You ready? You listening?
They got it.
It's not original with me. I saw it somewhere else.
Okay.
But this church put a QR code up on the screen, right? And they said, we would like to know who you are, and we'd like you to know more about us. And so if you don't mind, if you would use the QR code and let us know who you are, if you're comfortable doing that, for every one of those QR codes that we get today, we'll make a donation of $25 to the local women and children's shelter, if you would like to do that. I mean, and you do it, right?
Sure.
So I might be sitting there thinking, I don't want to give my information. But like, well, okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
sure. So you click and you go, and if you did that, thank you very much. So we've just made a $25 donation
Oh, my gosh.
to the local women. And you name the women and children's shelter. Not to your church.
Yeah.
But to the local women and children's shelter, we're grateful for that because that's one of the ministries we support here. And we'll be glad to tell you a little more about our church.
That's
and that kind of
pretty.
thing.
That's
Isn't that
cool
pretty
idea.
cool?
That's a cool idea.
All right, there you go.
Okay, I love it. Here are a couple other things.
All right, go ahead.
When it comes to offering, I think you need to be really clear that you're not obligated to give. That can be a weird
Here's
time.
what I always say. I say we're going to take an offering now, and this church is supported by the tithes and offerings of its members and regular attenders.
Yeah, that's
We
good.
do not expect first-time guests to give.
Yep.
Let me say that again.
Yep.
This church and its ministries is supported by the offerings and tithes of its members and regular attenders.
Yes.
We do not expect first-time guests to give.
I think that's
that
so important.
removes, because they're going, should I put $10 in? Should I put $5 in?
Yep.
And nobody else is putting cash in. What's the deal? So that really helps a lot.
Okay, so in one more, and then we're going to is we got to make sure visitors know where to go after the service. And this is actually number 9, is making a post-service connection.
Okay.
Helping people connect. Because we think about greeters on the front end.
Right.
What about greeters on the back end? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're here for the first time and you'd like to spend a few minutes with our pastor today, I'll be down here on the left. I'd be glad to talk to you. Just stand down there a few minutes and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay, here's the last one. Ready?
Yeah,
Number
ready?
10 is follow up.
That's right. With a
Follow
letter.
up.
With a letter. I got another great idea. How much time do we have, Kyle? Where are we? Huh?
I got a few more. Well, let's hear it. Come
I'll
on.
tell you what, if you'll just speed this up to
That's right.
once and two times, we'll talk faster, all right? Okay, so go ahead. You're talking about follow up. The letter. If they go ahead and you get their information, now don't demand information from them. Don't say, we want you to fill out that card. If you'd like for more information from us, please fill out the card. Or if you would like to use the QR code up there, we'll make a donation to the family shelter and we can learn a little more about you and you can learn a little more about us. If they do that, then follow up that week with a letter in the mail, not an email. If they give you their address, they don't give you an address, you got to do an email. But if they give you their address, a letter in the mail. And
Why in the mail?
Because people don't get stuff in the mail anymore.
That's
All
right.
you get's junk mail, and especially
fun to get
you hand address it on the front. You don't put a label on it. You hand address it on the front.
That's a good point.
All right?
Yeah.
So hand address it on the front, and then give us the list real quick, Mark, of the things that should be in that email, in that mail, in that letter. And if you have to do it in an email, put it in an email. You want me to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just do it, all right? Because it is a good list, and I think it'll really make a lot of sense. Okay, here we go. You ready? Number 1, Express gratitude by thanking them for attending and taking time to visit your church. Number 2, personalize the message. Use the guest's name, and if you can remember anything specific about them. It was great to have you and your 4 children here today.
Yeah.
That's really important, all right? Invite feedback. Then you say, we would love to know what you experienced and how we might improve that experience. Provide helpful information. By the way, we do have this coming up next month, and this is something that's coming up later on this month. And then offer support. Let them know that we're available to answer any questions, provide counseling, provide whatever you can do. Just something like that. So we'll put this in the show notes. Just those 5 things to put in a quick email or handwritten letter that you can send to folks. All right?
I love it, man. That's great.
Here's one other really weird off-the-wall idea.
Okay.
Ready? A lot of bands now, I do a lot of bluegrass promotion, and these bluegrass bands, man, nobody, unless you're driving your grandmother's 1997 Oldsmobile Delta 98, you don't have a CD player in your car anymore, right? And, nobody has a CD player.
That's true.
I was cool. I had a 5 CD changer. Man, that was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
We used to have CD players in your car. No CD player in your house anymore, right?
No, yeah.
So all these bands, they used to make money selling CDs, and nobody buys CDs anymore.
I don't know how they make money.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
But here's what they've done. Everybody has a USB port in your car,
that's
right?
true.
So what they do is they put all their songs on a USB port, and they sell the USB port. And so you can stick that in your USB. You can also go to Spotify and get their music, but that's another story for another day. But you can stick that in the USB. So here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that your church, even a small church, have someone record a message from the pastor thanking these people for attending your church today, talking a little bit about your church and why you're here, and not just bragging on yourself, but on the way you serve the community, the way you serve the world,
the vision.
The fact that we work with Southern Baptists around the world. We have missionaries in 120 countries, and we have the largest disaster relief and third largest in North America. We're all part of that. We're glad. So just kinds of how we love the world.
Yeah.
Maybe even have a quick couple of snippets from some church members to say what this church has meant to them, right? And then say, if you would like to, and we've also included another sermon from our pastor in case you would like to hear that. And you give that to them in the welcome gift.
That's a great idea.
And you say, hey, if you don't mind, you maybe on the way home, stick this in your car and you can listen to a little bit of that. I think it's a great idea.
That's a cool idea.
Is that a cool idea?
I love it. I love it, man.
I think I'll quit my job,
Hey.
and I think I'll go into a service of creating those. No, I think just that little, maybe it's kind of corny.
Dude, I think it's great.
But
I
whatever.
Love it.
Let me know if you think it's corny or if it's great. So if anybody does it, send them to me because I want to. It's just something I thought about last night.
Well, man, here's the thing. Here's what we know. You got to try stuff. You got to try stuff when it comes
always
to loving
been
and welcoming people.
Okay, here's it was Mother's Day, I think 1990. And Steve Dighton, a lot of you know who Steve Dighton is. He was just a relatively new pastor. Maybe it was 91, 92, I don't remember. Early in the 90s. He was a new pastor of the Nexa Baptist Church. And they had about 100 people there, right? And it was meeting in a rented facility. He asked me to come preach. So I went and preached. And I'll never forget, as I was leaving, the person at the door handed me a cassette tape. And it just said, please listen on the way home. Oh, what is this? So back then, everybody had cassettes in their cars. So I stuck it in my car, and that's what it was. It was a personal message from Steve Dighton thanking me for coming to his church, a little bit about the vision of his church, and then there was a couple of testimonies from members who'd been saved and their lives had been changed in that church.
Dude,
and I listened to that on the way home. And I've never forgotten that. And that was a Steve Dighton thing. I think, today the modern version of that would be put it on a USB stick.
I love it, man.
All right, that's all we got.
Okay.
We got nothing else. Until next time, see ya.
Thanks for joining us today on Revitalize and Replant. This podcast is brought to you by the North American Mission Board, where we help dying or struggling churches regain health for the glory of God and the good of their communities. If you found this conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. To learn more about becoming a replanting pastor or to explore resources about revitalization for your own church, visit churchreplanters.com.